Would also be great to discuss dermatology today, an area where we have been very active. So we'll go ahead and turn that back over to the corporate side to get some broader market commentary.
Yeah, the beginning of investor activity in dermatology. It's more prudent to give an update. This is a sector in retail medicine that was at the forefront of consolidation, probably second to dental in terms of the most mature, in terms of number of participants. So an interesting dynamic that, at least leading from the private equity investment community, this is not a novel, or new, bright, shiny object. But it has been characterized in the past, couple years as one in which, we're probably on 3.0, the iteration of an investment cycle. So unlike ophthalmology, where there's a lack of strategic buyers, you have had 8 or 9 platforms reset, trade from fund to fund at high multiples. So as a subsector that whether you saw multiples waning, just given the maturity of it, the kind of parity of information, if you will. You just saw stuff cooling off, and then you had a bunch of the large players reset. So in terms of strategic exits propping up valuations, not all of these are performing to perhaps where they would like to be. You've had some ups and downs, which is fine, and frankly is normal in any given subsector. But now you've got a tale of musical chairs in terms of top buyers. So the fact that you have 8 to maybe even 10 buyers of $5 to $15 million assets helps keep valuations up, and then that trickles down to some of the smaller add-ons. I guess one interesting new concept is the higher acceptance of the pure cash pay cosmetic procedures folding into larger dermatology platforms. The sector was somewhat bifurcated for a while. There's a lot of buzz around med spa and plastic surgery, and dermatology players are buyers of those assets as well. So I think valuation, folks are looking at the full complement of services and some of the bread and butter stuff that we've spoke about. Have you set up a business that has the infrastructure that's supporting both the providers and the patients, leading with quality care, retention, all those good things. So it's not new, but a newer feature is getting into the more cosmetic side, coming from the larger dermatology practices. Also, in largely a buy and build sector, there is a heightened emphasis that would lead to a higher relative valuations by demonstrating de novo growth. So it could be a land and expand, but that there is a premium currently in the market for those companies that can show a history of de novo versus M&A growth.
Yeah. Cal, maybe the only add-on I'd have there just would be what we've kind of noticed perhaps most recently is it's almost, and you mentioned it was early on in the adoption process as far as investment from platforms, outside investment into dermatology. And obviously there was significant income there generated by dermatologists that was available and allowed for some of this effectively monetization of what was formerly physician compensation. But those groups really early on, I think, showed the blueprint for independent groups of how to continue to expand, their income streams and get more into the retail function. So as they would introduce med spa, aesthetics, things like that into their practice, I think that kind of showed the blueprint for how existing dermatology practice and independent dermatology practices could certainly achieve some of that income expansion on their own without third-party investment. So, which may have caused a little bit of a slowdown of what we've seen more recently with dermatology practices and investment by third-party private equity platforms.
Great. Very well stated on the corporate side. Thank you very much. From a real estate perspective, dermatology is another specialization which we've additionally been fortunate to guide a number of practices through the monetization process of their bricks and mortar and their real estate. So a couple of the unique aspects of dermatology, right, is you have a very high level of clinical build in these types of assets. So you have a number of your MOs as well as your image guided SRT procedural base, not quite a ASC setting in a lot of these scenarios, but really a very high acuity clinical setting. So with our unique knowledge and really lease rate that we've attributed to these practices monetization, we have a particular value add in the space where we can talk various acquisition candidates through what may be somewhat of an atypical type of a transaction where a lot of these acquisition candidates would think, well, clinical real estate setting is clinical real estate setting, but not all medical office settings are alike in that there is a drastic increase of acuity in the dermatological space that needs to be accounted for, quite frankly, in these monetization events. So it's not quite an ASC setting in a lot of these scenarios, but just under, and we're excited to give the thoughts in regards to those practices in monetizing the bricks and mortar for the firm.
Thanks, Clint. To kind of echo the commentary around distinction of different levels of clinical build out. You see the term surgery center thrown around a lot, and it's a through piece through a lot of these specialties that they have some form of surgical space or procedure rooms or operating rooms. And when you see an offering memorandum for a dermatology clinic, you may see a state-of-the-art surgery center. I think it is important to understand the distinction between building requirements for dermatological space versus urology, orthopedic, and so on and so forth. As a real estate analyst and someone who's called upon to provide third-party fair market value opinions, I see a lot of a muddling of those different asset types. Someone's arguing that their value or their lease rate should be X because, hey, here's a surgery center over here that sold or leased for this amount. Understanding what type of surgery center that was, what are the value drivers for the sticks and bricks, and then on the other side, not comparing a dermatology center to a standard medical office that's just basic exam room space. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the main point that I would drive home is that dermatology kind of exists in this middle ground between the higher end ortho ASCs and more of a typical medical office space, and from a real estate perspective, just understanding where a particular property and building lies.
Outstanding. Thank you, Victor.